updates for that, for our current recovery. Joining us today to give you some updates on the situation is Francois Bouchard, the Director of Capital Priorities and Investment for the City of Calgary, and also to talk about staying safe in the heat, we have Simon Bradley from the Emergency Management and Community Safety Department who will give us a few tips. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Francois Bouchard. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to provide an update on our progress in the system stabilization and to answer questions we have been hearing about our current restriction levels and how we plan to move to Stage 2 outdoor water restrictions, including some of the things we're looking at to make sure that we move ahead in a way that doesn't jeopardize the progress we have made so far or stretch our water supply too thin. Yesterday, we resumed daily 2 p.m. updates as a way of keeping everyone informed about our latest news and progress. Sometimes these will be through a live stream, and sometimes, like today, we will have media availabilities to allow the media to ask questions directly. With yesterday's heat, our water use increased again to 567 million litres. Up from the 555 million litres on Tuesday. This was expected, and with Stage 3 outdoor watering restrictions in place, we've been able to meet the demand. We have received questions about our water demand since we've eased indoor water conservation measures. So we eased indoor water conservation measures over a week ago on July the 2nd. And moved to Stage 3 outdoor water restrictions on Saturday. As the graph shows, we had a gradual increase in use from Thursday, Friday, and through the weekend. On Monday, with the increased heat, we started to see a spike in use. This is a normal pattern during a heat wave. We anticipated this increase, and we expected our use to drop over the coming days as the temperatures cool. As I mentioned in yesterday's live stream, we know people want us to be able to move to a Stage 2 outdoor water restriction, which will allow some use of sprinklers and hoses. We want to lift the restrictions as well, but we are continuing to proceed with caution. Yesterday, we saw an example of why this is important. If we had been in Stage 2 restrictions, we believe our water demand would have been 70 to 100 million litres higher, due primarily to running of sprinklers and hoses. With the current water flow rate through the feeder main, it would have been hard for us to meet this higher demand. What we're doing in the meantime is try to accommodate immediate needs to our water supply. Yesterday, we made an exception to restrictions of all outdoor pools, including backyard kiddie pools. This was done to provide more options for people to stay cool in this very warm weather. It was a priority because of the relation to health and safety. We also assessed the amount of water that would be used for this purpose to be relatively small compared to other activities like allowing sprinklers. As a reminder, other outdoor water uses is allowed under Stage 3, including watering your garden using a watering can or other container. If you know someone who may have challenges with watering by hand due to mobility issues or other reasons, we encourage you to be a water angel and offer to help if needed. Full details of what's allowed for Stage 3 can be found at calgary.ca/restrictions. Now, lifting outdoor water conservation and the move to Stage 3 outdoor water restriction allowed many industries to resume more normal water use. However, we know that there are certain industries, including irrigators and landscapers, who are still being impacted. Over the past few days, we have met with the Irrigation Association to hear their concerns, and yesterday we shared a letter with some clarification on what activities can continue while Stage 3 water restrictions are in effect. We will be speaking with them again today and are committed to continuing to work together to address their concerns. Our biggest barrier to moving to Stage 2 outdoor water restrictions is making sure we can supply enough water to meet the increased demand, including during heat waves and other demand spikes like the one we've seen these past few days. Our flow through the feeder main remains at 55% of its capacity. The water system also needs to continue supplying water as regular maintenance and repairs occur. So for example, we were completing some main replacement work at the Bear Spa water treatment plant. And earlier this week, we detected 2 additional wire snaps within the pipe. And today we detected a 3rd. These snaps do not mean another break is imminent. The wire coils around each 16-foot segment of pipe approximately 350 times, and the snaps were spread across 3 locations along the feeder main. So to put it in perspective, the break and the hot spots that were repaired occurred in areas where there were approximately 50 individual snapped wires in a single segment of pipe. As we've previously shared, we know that there are other areas of concern where we have detected some snapped wires and the pipe is structurally weaker. Again, as we have shared, we know we will need to create a medium to long-term rehabilitation plan for these sections. So, the 3 additional snaps are not immediate cause for concern. However, they do show that the pipe is under some stress under the current flow conditions. To comfortably move to the next stage, we will need to increase the flow in the pipe, but we're moving very cautiously because we don't want to risk another significant break that could set back our progress. Our current plan is to continue to monitor and evaluate the pipe's ability to handle increased flow. If we determine that the pipe can handle the increased pressure, it will allow us to look at moving to the stage 2 water restrictions. We are also continuing to do some acoustic monitoring, and we will be installing additional fiber optic cable that will also be used for ongoing monitoring. We are still waiting data from the pipe diver, which is the instrument that we use to do the condition assessment and that we deployed last week. We should have that in approximately 3 weeks, and it will give us additional data to help determine the next steps. At this time, I'd like to thank you for your time and for your continued support. We will provide our next update at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and I'd like to now pass the floor over to Simon Bradley from Emergency Management and Community Safety to talk about some safety measures in the current heat.
Thank you, Francois. We want Calgarians to safely enjoy the summer months within our city. With the high temperatures this week, Calgarians may be looking to get a reprieve from the heat. There are many indoor public spaces with air conditioning, such as libraries and recreation centers, where citizens can seek relief from the heat, as well as outdoor spaces, such as spray parks and pools. We encourage Calgarians to visit these locations if they're feeling hot and uncomfortable. Even a short break in a cool space can help keep your core temperature down and help keep you safe and healthy. These locations and other spaces to cool off around the city are indicated on our interactive cool-down map that's located at calgary.ca/heat. In addition to the spaces identified within the cool-down map, shelters continue to report that they have capacity and can provide respite from the heat for people experiencing homelessness. During high temperatures, people experiencing vulnerabilities are most often at risk of severe outcomes. We are working closely with our social services partners to ensure supports and resources are available to people experiencing those vulnerabilities. The help team, bylaw officers, and community partners are working together to be extra vigilant to be able to help those experiencing homelessness who might need help and assistance during these times. The city's Vulnerable Person Team, formerly PAL, was increasing patrols to known encampments and bringing basic supplies and bottled water to hand out during these welfare checks. Our Transit Public Safety Team is also working with community partners to hand out bottled water at LRT stations and sharing information about resource access. It's important to also keep our pets in mind during this hot weather. Our friends at Parachutes for Pets are offering a cooling space located at their location for people to take their pets for a temporary relief from the heat. That map that location is noted on our interactive map on calgary.ca. We also want to remind you to never leave your pet unattended in a vehicle, not even for a moment in this hot weather. We do have some additional tips that we want to share during these hot days of summer. Make sure you drink plenty of water to avoid becoming dehydrated, and you need to be drinking that water before you get thirsty. If you're out and about, a number of seasonal water fountains are available throughout the city. They're in parks and 6 locations around the downtown core in areas of high pedestrian traffic that feature a drinking fountain, a water bottle filling station, and overhead misting to be able to escape the heat. The deployment of these water stations was delayed due to the water feeder main break. However, we're pleased to report that 2 are operational as of today, with the remaining 4 coming online in the coming days. Those locations are also included on that map on calgary.ca. You can dress for the weather by wearing loose-fitting clothing, a brimmed hat, and UVA and UVB protected sunglasses. Continue to pay attention to weather forecasts, wear sunscreen, and never leave pets or people inside a parked vehicle or in direct sunlight. If someone in your life is more vulnerable to the dangers of heat, such as seniors, infants, or people with health conditions, please check in on them regularly during this hot stretch. We'd also like to remind residents that heat stroke is a medical emergency. If you or someone you know is in medical distress due to the hot weather, please call 911 immediately. For more information, including our interactive cool-down map, it's available on calgary.ca/heat. Thank you. I'll hand it back to Sherry for any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Questions? Bill?
So thank you for the question. The question was, are we going to wait until we get the pipe diver data before we have subsequent decisions? And that is exactly the work that we're doing right now, is to determine if we have sufficient information about the condition of the pipe and our operating adjustments that we are investigating to be able to go to the next stage. So the answer is, it depends. It depends on the work that we're doing right now and whether or not we have sufficient confidence that the risk is sufficiently mitigated for us to get to that next stage. I don't want to underemphasize the risks that we're taking by moving through the various stages of operation. So they are located at 3 different locations along the feeder main across almost its whole length in terms of the locations. So there's not one specific hotspot, if you want to call it that, where they're all occurring. They're spread out over the length of the pipe. So it is along that one feeder main that we are currently monitoring, yes. So in terms of the current water restrictions, the 7 sites that we had for residential users was simply because they weren't able to use their taps to get water for those non-potable uses, which are really about watering your plants, trees. And now that we're in restriction level 3, then people can simply open their taps and use that water. I don't think that I've said that we're not concerned about the snaps. I think that what we're saying is that we're not in imminent danger of another failure like we saw at the beginning of June. The snaps provide clues in terms of how the pipe is behaving under pressure. So right now, our pipe is only at about 80% pressure, which if you talk to the oil and gas industry, when they after they have a pipe break and they put their pipe back into operations, that's the similar practice that they would use in terms of bringing it up to a lower pressure than normal and continuing to do the analysis like we're doing right now, using as much information as possible. Those additional snaps, yes, there are of concern. Does that mean that we are imminently going to get a break? No, it means that we need to continue to understand how this pipe is going to behave as we go from 80% pressure to the higher pressures, which will give us more flow. Yeah, so the question around the life of the pipe and whether or not it's unusual for the wire snaps to occur, we know as an industry that as this type of pipe deteriorates, you do get wire snaps. So the fact that we get some wire snaps doesn't mean that we automatically have to go and replace the pipe, simply that we need to continue doing our monitoring, our assessment, and determining at what point we go in and do a rehabilitation program. We know that the condition of the pipe right now, we are going to have a medium to long-term rehabilitation plan for the complete pipe. Yeah, and I know that everybody wants to know the answer to that question. And there is a whole team that is working on making sure that all of the costs are accounted for. The latest information that I've received is that we're looking at getting that information in the next 3 weeks. I know. And what I'm going to do to answer that question of why do you have a difference between 55% flow but 82% pressure? And what I'm going to do is use an analogy, if you permit me, which is when you look at the design of an engine can be designed to either have high torque or high horsepower, and you end up with a completely different use case depending on how you design the engine, whether you're putting it into a sports car or a truck. And it's very much the same when you're looking at a pump for a water distribution system. They're designed so that they operate to deliver specific characteristics. And that is one where under its operational regime, you don't see a lot of fluctuation in the pressure over a range of different flows in the pipe. So it's just the way that the pipe is designed that when it's operating at 8% pressure, you're seeing 55% of the flow relative to its capacity. I know it's complicated. Yeah. So you're asking me, like, how much confidence do we have that we can push the pipe further than what we have it at? And that's a very good question, and that's why we have a group of engineers, both internally and external experts, working with us. And it might feel frustrating when it appears as if we're moving very slowly, but we're moving cautiously, making sure that we are doing the appropriate analyses to confirm that we can get to that next step. And I might rephrase your question, because you're asking, like, are Calgarians going to continue conserving water or abiding by the water restrictions? And what I can tell you is that we've seen a tremendous response from Calgarians. We know that they've taken significant measures, even when the restrictions legally don't allow us to force that on people. All of the indoor water conservation measures, those were all voluntary. And as Calgarians, we all got together, we all pitched in and said, what can we do to reduce that water consumption? In the same way, we've seen businesses that have stepped up and right from the start voluntarily said, we're going to change our processes, even though they were using water using for indoor purposes. They cut back on their water use. We've had some businesses that have come up with innovative solutions, and I'm going to hazard a guess that we're going to be selling a little bit less product in terms of water to them, because they now have ways of doing and producing their product with a little bit less water, which is great. Water conservation, being able to hold on some of the behaviors that we've established over this last month or so, are really important into the future.
Thank you. We've got time for a final question.
So there was nothing in advance that would tell us that an imminent and the failure that we got was going to happen. Having said that, we were doing our due diligence in terms of preparing to do an inspection. Knowing that it was halfway through its life, we thought that this was a good time given the importance of this pipe in terms of its condition. We did not expect, though, to see the condition that we found. So it's,
Sure.
No, and I think that's it's a really good question, asking about, some of the repercussions that can happen when we have severe weather and how it can impact people, especially in cars, and their stories of charges that have been laid. The amount that the heat gets caught inside a vehicle is significant. I think we know that as when we get into our vehicle in the afternoon when it's been left out in the sun, it's exceptionally hot, and we quickly cool it down, open the windows. If we leave a dog or a person in that vehicle for even a period of time, the amount that vehicle warms up is significant, and absolutely it can be fatal to animals or to people as well. And that's why our recommendation is you don't leave an animal or a person in a car, no matter how long. It's not worth it. There are serious consequences to that, and I think it's worth making sure that we're looking out for human life and the life of our animals.